Welcome, fellow Lions fans. That win over the 49ers was incredible.
You've been waiting for.
Meaningless.
The show where
Still,
Kool-Aid
though,
runs blue.
life is good. So much
Faces
better after a
red.
win. Food looks prettier.
And rose-colored
Life tastes
glasses
better.
never go out of style.
Wait, did I get that backwards?
This is
No, I think that's right.
the Detroit Lions Podcast.
Speaking of tasting good, did you see the Pop-Tart Bowl with its yearly ritual sacrifice of a virgin Pop-Tart to the Toaster God? I'm sure Toaster God is much happier these days getting those virgin Pop-Tarts as opposed to getting dropped in Lions fans' bathtubs. Although not sure this year's Pop-Tart was actually a virgin, as it was covered in gooey white stuff looking a little suspicious for a chlamydia infection. Pop-Tart probably should have gone to see an urgent care or a primary care doctor for testing and treatment, but sadly for the poor guy, it's a little too late for that now. We salute you, and thank you for your service. R.I.P., my friend. May you rest in crumbly little pieces. Sticking with the topic of this emerging, concerning health pandemic of contracting sexually transmitted infections from previously inanimate objects, Jake Bates is going to need to get tested after his intimate moment with the 49ers turf. As they say, if there's grass on the field, play ball. But Mr. Bates, I think you took it a little bit too literally. At least nobody saw it though, right? Wait just a second. Just got the ratings, and it was the most watched Monday Night Football game all year and top 5 since 2006. I guess there's only one way out of this mess, which is for the 49er turf and Jake Bates to start an OnlyFans account. Other bad news, Sam Darnold continues to play fantastic and has led the Vikings to a 14-2 record, which means we have to beat them this Sunday to win the division and the number 1 seed. I've been waiting all year for Darnold to turn into a pumpkin, but unfortunately the only part of him that's been turning orange is his beard. I do have some good news to report though, which is an update on my Christmas wish list that I discussed last episode. Last week, I mentioned I got almost everything I wanted except for a Lombardi trophy stuffed into my stocking. Santa apparently, though, goes deep into his podcast listing. He saw my podcast, texted me, and said, let me read this for you. Ho, ho, ho. Sorry, Doc. Hit the eggnog a little too hard, which made it difficult to shove that large object into that tight hole. Should be ready to go by February, though. P.S. Your Lombardi trophy is also coming soon. Okay, Santa, wow. Sort of like Jake Bates, a little bit TMI, but thanks for that update. No worries, Santa, we've all been there. Got to work on that refractory period, but the bottom line for all Lions fans is keep those stockings up until February, because Santa is coming with your Lombardi. I'm Jimmy Liao, University of Michigan Medical School grad, board certified in family medicine, lifelong Lions fan. This is the Detroit Lions Podcast Medical Edition. Today is January the 1st. Happy New Year. Also, happy Hanukkah to all my Jewish friends as that ends tomorrow. I went to the University of Pennsylvania where about 20% of the students are Jewish. Lots of great experiences and memories with all my Jewish buddies. Love all my Jewish peoples.
Isn't that a little racist?
If I like their race, how can that be racist?
All right, now let's get to the 49er game recap. Then we'll do the Lions-Vikings first injury report of the week and finish up with the IR list update. 49er recap. Fortunately, another pretty healthy game. Brian Branch in the second quarter got up with a slight limp on the right leg, reached for his calf just a bit. He's had calf issues over the past 3 or 4 weeks. I got video of him reaching for that right leg area, both in the Bills game and the Packers game 2 and 3 weeks ago. I'm suspecting he's been playing through some kind of soft tissue strain over the past few weeks. Guys are playing through all sorts of things that do not show up on the injury report, although he did have a calf on the injury report a couple weeks ago. Probably still playing through a calf. Lots of you guys have notified me online on X that he's got a history of calf cramps dating all the way back to college. So thank you for that information. I did not know that. Calf cramps, along with a calf strain, Could be a combination issue going on here. Both are muscle issues. One potentially could lead to the other. Both a calf strain could cause a calf cramp. Calf cramp could cause a calf strain. So it could be a combination issue for Brian Branch that he's been dealing with for a while. Good for him for toughing things out. Be great to get that bye so he can get a couple weeks off. That might do him wonders. And this is an example of guys not playing at 100%, which is a reason why Aiden Hutchinson does not need to be fully recovered before he comes back for the Super Bowl. Next was Amon-Ra St. Brown, left knee in the third quarter. Got up, grabbing at that left knee with a heavy limp. Looked concerning at first, but he stayed in, caught a pass the next play. Looked great the rest of the game. Slow-mo that video down, looked like his left knee just sort of scraped or hit the ground. It wasn't at the right angle to be concerning for a PCL sprain. Probably just a mild contusion of the patella or just a scrape abrasion. Jahmyr Gibbs in the third quarter lacerated or abraded his left cheek, probably on his own helmet. Did not see on video exactly how that happened. Medical was applying pressure to the wound for a good amount of time. That suggests to me it was a superficial wound, nothing deep, nothing requiring sutures. Otherwise, they would have immediately taken him to the back to investigate for possible suture repair. Suture repair is pretty easy to do. I've done it tons of times in urgent care. It's a clean procedure, not a sterile procedure. You don't need an OR to do it. You just need a clean environment. Very easy to do. I could even do it in the blue tent if necessary. No problems. Quick, easy, numb it up, put a few stitches in there. He's good to go. I don't think they did that. I don't think it was necessary. They just put a bandage on and he got back in and played. No issues going forward. Jake Bates in the fourth quarter. Heavily memed video now of him doing some work on his left leg. On TV, they reported he was massaging it with a softball. To me, that suggests he's got some kind of muscle tightness there that's going on. So it's not a totally benign stretch. I know after the game he said that he was just stretching and he's totally fine, but I don't think it's a routine stretch that he was doing if he was using a softball to try to work something out in his muscle. Of note, he missed an extra point later on in the game. So this is something to watch going forward. He might just have a mild muscle strain or muscle contusion issue going on there. Keep an eye on him in the Vikings game. See how well he kicks. If he kicks well that game, then he should be totally fine going forward. If he's a little bit shaky, well, then this left leg issue could be the reason. Penei Sewell left early for the locker room before halftime because of a thumb issue that was reported after the game. Dan Campbell said there was no long-term concern at all, so no issues with him. I reviewed all his plays in the first half to see if there were any signs of any thumb issues. I did not see anything. It's possible he even came into the game with a mild thumb issue that just needed to get retaped up or resplinted up or something. Regardless, he's fine going forward. That's all I saw in the 49er game. Nothing major, nothing significant, and that was confirmed in the first injury report of the week. Let's get to that right now. The big news, Alex Anzalone finally started his 21-day practice window. It's been 6.5 weeks now since he broke his forearm. The forearm was expected to take about 6 to 8 weeks for recovery. So him starting the window at 6.5 weeks is a little bit later than I had hoped for or expected. I thought he could have started this a couple weeks ago, but he's starting it now at least. So that's good news that he should be ready soon. The question is, could he be ready by this Sunday, the Vikings game? I'm leaning no at this point for a couple reasons. First of all, his practice designation today was an LP, limited practice. To me, that's a signal that he's not fully physically ready yet to play. Now, he might get to an FP later this week, but the initial LP is a sign that he might not be quite ready for Sunday. The other reason is he just opened his practice window today. If he played on Sunday, he'd be playing on day 5 of his 21-day window. Now, I know no one needs to use their 21-day window, but if the plan was for him to possibly play week 18, seems like they would have considered starting his window last week or even the week before. From a mental standpoint, he's certainly ready. He's been with us for 4 years. He's a leader on the linebacker unit. No issues mentally. He could just jump right in mentally and play just fine. Physically, he probably could play too with a protective splint. Last year, Dallas Goedert had a very similar looking forearm fracture. He was back in 5 weeks with a protective splint. Now, why might Anzalone not be willing to play with a protective splint? Well, there is a small risk of a refracture. We saw that with Rob Gronkowski about 10 years ago when he came back in about 6 weeks with a forearm fracture. And a couple weeks later, he refractured it. So the last thing we want with Anzalone certainly is a refracture. If this was the playoffs, if this was the Super Bowl, I think he's definitely playing. But since it's still the regular season, probably playing it safe here and saving him for the playoffs. At this point, I'm leaning he's going to be out on Sunday, but he'll definitely be ready whenever our first playoff game is. Some of you guys on X had questions about the 21-day practice window strategy, why he can't just play early on in the window. Well, he can, but the practice window is free practice time. It doesn't cost an active roster spot. It doesn't cost the team anything. So it seems like the team and the player would want to try to maximize that window as much as possible. At least get out there and run around with the teammates, do individual drills, do non-contact stuff. Seems like that would be beneficial to Anzalone just to do that for a little while, but who knows? This is an interesting one for me to watch to see if he actually plays this weekend, though. Historically, looking at last year, the Lions typically use most of the practice window for the guys coming off of injured return, unless they start that 21-day practice window immediately after the 4-week IR stint. Just last week, Jalen Reeves-Maybin did play in day 11 of his 21-day practice window, so potentially the Lions' strategy has slightly shifted and they're willing to play guys a little bit earlier in the window. Whether Anzalone plays or not this weekend will tell us a lot about how the Lions are going to manage the window going forward. Khalif Raymond had a full practice. He had full practices all last week as well. He opened his 21-day window last week. So this is his second week of the window. He opened the window immediately after his 4-week IR stint, which suggests that he could be ready at any time. I'm suspecting he's ready now and he's going to play versus the Vikings. David Montgomery, as expected with an NP. I'm expecting NPs all this week. He hurt his MCL, likely more than just an MCL, on December the 15th, which was 2.5 weeks ago. A moderate MCL would take about 4 weeks, but there's something a little bit more going on than just a mild to moderate MCL. So NPs all this week would not be surprising. The hope is he's back in about 2.5 weeks for the second round of the playoffs, which would be 5 weeks post-injury. He's not on IR, so he can practice and play at any time. The best case scenario, I think, would be to see him get in some practices before our first playoff game. Next on the report is Jack Campbell, who's a mild surprise with a rib. He had an LP, which is reassuring, though. He played 100% of defensive snaps last game. I didn't see any issues on my initial watch. Guys can fracture ribs and play through it. We saw Anzalone do that last year. He wasn't even on the report for a rib fracture. You can play through a rib fracture. It could be a rib strain, could be a lot of other things. The LP suggests it's nothing too serious, and very likely he's going to be playing Sunday night. Another mild surprise was Amik Robertson with a calf with an LP. Like Jack Campbell, he played 100% of defensive snaps last game without signs of any injury. The LP suggests nothing major, probably a calf strain is what we're dealing with. He should play versus the Vikings without a problem. Expect him to get up to an FP by Thursday or Friday. Emmanuel Mosley's the last guy on the report with an NP due to an illness. Mosley's interesting. He was active last game but did not log a single snap either on defense or special teams. Illnesses usually recover within a day or two, so we should see an upgrade to his status over the course of this week. Not sure how much it matters, though, since he's not even getting any snaps for us right now. But in case one of our current healthy cornerbacks goes down, it'd be good to have Mosley there just in case. The guys who did not show up on the report, Graham Glasgow, who had a knee issue last week, Brian Branch, as I mentioned earlier, with his right leg or calf, not on the report. Penei Sewell's thumb is not on the report. Amon-Ra St. Brown's left knee is not on the report. And Jake Bates' penis is not on the report. Now let's do the IR list update. Good news is the list is shrinking. Lions have now used 7 of 10 IR returns with Anzalone coming off this week. The 7 were Anzalone, Raymond, Broderick Barden, Mosley, Reeves-Maybin, and Melifonwu twice. So we have 3 left. likely going to Rakestraw, Davis, and Hutchinson. Ennis Rakestraw hurt his hamstring November the 23rd. He was eligible to return 2 weeks ago, but his 21-day practice window did not open and still is not open. That implies he's still at least 3 weeks away. Carlton Davis, jaw fracture December the 15th. Initial estimated recovery was 6 weeks, which would put him in the NFC Championship game. But Dan Campbell sounded pretty pessimistic a couple weeks ago, but got to take what he says with a grain of salt. Things can change. Aiden Hutchinson, left tib-fib fracture, October the 13th. Currently at 11 and a half weeks post-injury. That bone should be fully healed at this point. No issue with the bone. Right now, it's about strengthening that leg. I did see a video somebody sent me a few days ago with him doing some light jogging in a pool. Notable on that video is the left thigh still shows significant atrophy, which is expected. Nothing unusual about that. That left leg probably won't even get up to the strength of the right leg till the off season. It doesn't need to be at the same strength as the right leg, though. He can still play. Him doing jogging in a pool doesn't tell me a whole lot, though. The pool significantly reduces weight, so unless the Lions are planning the Flood Ford field, turning it into a swimming pool, that video doesn't tell me a whole lot. I do still expect him to play in the Super Bowl in limited action, not at his usual self, get 10 or 20 snaps with minimal to moderate effectiveness. Maybe more of a decoy than anything. Still nice to see that he's posting regular update videos on his progress. The Super Bowl at this point is now only 5.5 weeks away, so he's hitting the rehab hard. Let's move on now to the Vikings injury report, which is pretty minimal. The main concern coming out of the last game was Pat Jones, their defensive end pass rusher. Video looked like a right MCL sprain, which would make it very difficult for him to be ready by Sunday. He had an NP today, which also suggests he's going to be out. He's got 7 sacks for the year. This could be a big loss for the Vikings pass rush. He's third on the team in sacks behind Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard. The other NP for the Vikings was Camu Grugier-Hill, linebacker with an illness. He's only a backup, though, has now played a defensive snap in the past 2 games, so minimal impact there. Aaron Jones is the other big name on the report, with a quad with an LP. Recall that earlier in the year, week 5, his right leg was bothering him in a very similar location in that right upper leg area. Last game, he had a wrap in that same location. It's being reported as a quad contusion, although I'm suspecting it's a little bit more than that. Suspecting a mild soft tissue strain. Regardless, he hasn't missed a game all year, and he's almost certainly going to play against us. He's had a great year so far with 1,093 rushing yards at 4.5 per, as well as 46 receptions for 378 yards. Harrison Smith, their longtime starting safety, is on there with a foot with an LP. He played 100% of snaps last game, so that suggests he's going to play against us. CJ Ham, their fullback, LP with a quad. He's mostly special teams player, minimal usage on offense. Fabian Moreau, their cornerback, with a hip and LP. He's only played a limited amount this year and has missed the last 2 games, so minimal impact there. The last guy on their list was Josh Oliver, tight end with a wrist, an FP, which means he's likely going to play. He's got 20 catches for 242 yards this year. All right, enjoy the game Sunday night, Week 18, huge one. Getting that number 1 seed is critically important. I talked about this last episode, the reasons why it's so important. Winning this game against the Vikings is basically like winning a playoff game. So let's go get it. Enjoy the game Sunday night. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.